Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon and welcome to this session. It's a great time to be here and it's a very interesting topic. And so we're going to look at this very interesting topic today. So let's begin. Leading with emotional intelligence in a COVID-19 pandemic time. I will start by showing the first picture here. What this tells me is that Lagos as a state is on lockdown. And what this means is that there are implications when there are lockdown, when there is lockdown in any particular city, or when there is a global lockdown. Some of the implications would be that, it's an unusual time. People are afraid. They don't know what next. People don't know what they need to do. They don't know where their next bread will be coming. Some people, some individuals, even though they have job right now, they don't know because there's so much uncertainty with this COVID-19. And so we might have our job today, but along the line, we might not be guaranteed that. And so it comes with what we call anxiety, it comes with stress, it comes with mood, it comes with a lot of things. And so this subject, emotional intelligence, wouldn't have come at a better time than now. I'm going to move on to look at some of the quick housekeeping issues. Let's look at the housekeeping issues. The number one is that all participants will be muted throughout the duration of the program. However, the host will grant access as necessary. When we get to a point where an individual wants to ask a question, if I see it right in the chart, then I will be able to give that particular participant access. The next one will be that we are recording today's webinar. And so it's going to be recorded and we will be able to share the link with you at the end of the program. Then the last but not least will be that during the presentation, if you encounter any audio issue, please refresh your browser. Let's move to the program really. So what are the goals of the program today? The number one goal is that we really want to look at from the perspective of COVID-19 and the kind of effect it will have on individuals, employees, business owners. We want to look at what are some of the steps we need to take with regard to EI. What is emotional intelligence? What does it really mean? What is emotions? So how does emotion come to play at this critical time? So being aware of your own EI and how to improve it. So we're going to be looking at different models in terms of how, to understand your emotional intelligence. First of all, we need to understand. We need to how to express our emotions. Then we need to also identify those emotions. Then we will move there to, to where we say, okay, what are some of the tips that we as leaders, those of us who are subordinates, how are we going to make sure that at this particular critical time, this critical juncture that the world is today, that we have the necessary EI tools, the emotional intelligence tools in our repertoire to be able to deal with the current challenges. So we want to also update us. We need to have some repertoire. We need to know what kind of feelings we have at any particular time and how we are able to navigate that feeling. And the truth of the matter is that there will be a lot of challenges. Some individuals at this time, they've lost loved ones. Some individuals, they've lost their jobs. Some individuals, they are afraid of whether they're going to lose their job. Some individuals, they've not been able to pay the bills. And so some of these persons might be very close to us. They might be our subordinates. And so how do you, at this time, show some level of empathy? How do you lead in a crisis time? And we found out that emotional intelligence and all these competencies, abilities, skills are necessary, and they are what we need to have in our repertoire at this time. And so join me today, and with that, once we are able to navigate that, we'll be saying, yes, we have achieved our objective. But it is important for me to emphasize few things. This might not be the first time we are we are attending emotional intelligence class, but it's the dimension we want to take it today is not the normal dimension. So I have the opportunity to have attended at least 3 emotional intelligence class. One of them was in 2015 when I went to the Wharton School, so at the University of Pennsylvania in the US, where I did a program on leadership edge. And right in that program, I was privileged to sit in the class of Professor Siga Basade, who is a renowned professor on emotional intelligence. And I was so shocked and amazed at the kind of new perspective that she brought to the fore. And prior to that, I was also privileged in 2015, in 2011, up until 2018. I did my DBA, Doctorate of Business Administration at SMC University. And one of my core area of research was actually looking at how emotional intelligence actually affect work-related outcomes, like job satisfaction, organizational commitment, empowerment, organizational citizenship behavior, organizational justice, and leadership. And so those kind of experiences. And last year, in October, I had another opportunity to be in another class of Basade, again at the Wharton School, and this time trying to look at emotional intelligence from a global perspective. And so with that kind of understanding, being a researcher, and I've also published a paper which I'm going to share in the course of this program on emotions, personality, leadership, and how leaders can navigate through the murky waters of their organizations using the tools of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence has been defined by so many people. And so in research, we say that there are as many definitions of emotional intelligence as those who have attempted to define it. So let's proceed. So emotional intelligence really has been defined by so many people. But there are 2 key definitions that I want to really highlight as we proceed in this program. The first one is the definition by Friedman and Jensen that I was given in 2005. He said EI is an individual's ability to consciously and artfully choose his or her feelings through and thoughts and action to get optimal result in his or her relationship with him or herself and others. And so when an individual artfully, and consciously choose his or her feeling, thoughts, and action to get optimal result. Remember, consciously and artfully, that is skillfully. So there's an intentionality. So it's not something you do haphazardly, it's something that is deliberate. And so when it is done deliberately, smartly, skillfully, and you are able to moderate your feelings, your mood, then that is what Jensen and Friedman called emotional intelligence. And it is important to understand it from this perspective. And these slides will be made available to you, so you'll be able to compare. Remember that from a LeishTon perspective, we are first a research organization, and anything we do, we are very bullish, we are very rigorous with regard to research. We don't leave any stone unturned. We make sure that we give you all the available information. And some of the definitions, like the definition of Daniel Goleman, which we are going to look from the second slide, if you look at Daniel Goleman's emotional intelligence, he's talk about emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize and regulate emotions in ourselves and in others. And so when you look at this one, for those who are very familiar, I know that a lot of us who have read the book, Emotional Intelligence, Why It Matters More Than IQ, or of that Daniel Goleman wrote in 1995, or the Working with Emotional Intelligence that Daniel Goleman wrote in 1998, and the Harvard Business Review also of 1998, you will observe that in 1995 and 2008, Daniel Goleman talks about 5 competencies. And if you look at his definition, emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize and regulate emotions in ourselves. That relates to 3 of the competencies in 1995 and 98, which is self-awareness, and self-awareness, self-motivation, and self-management. But in 2000, Daniel Goleman modified that and turned it to a 2x2 matrix. And so rather than 3 self-understanding, knowing yourself from inside out, Daniel Goleman used only 2 competencies, broad area, which is self-awareness and self-management. And the other side, which is trying to understand the emotions in others, emotionality of other persons, Daniel Goleman used 2 emotional competencies. The first one is social awareness. The 4th one, which is the 4th in the quadrant, is relationship management. And so if you look at this definition, relationship management and social awareness has to do with other people. How do you understand from their own perspective, their own emotions? And how are you able to use that awareness to relate with them and get the best, whether in terms of productivity, in terms of relationship, in terms of teamwork, in terms of collaboration, in terms of effectiveness in the workplace, in terms of effectiveness of the individual. And so that is how is them. So when you look at the demonstration, the definition by Goleman, you can directly link it with the quadrant, which is self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. We will get there. So this class really is not really to discuss the nitty-gritty of the Daniel Goleman model, but it's just to look at what are some of the background information. What is going on in things we call the cortisol? What is going on with the brain? Why? And so rather than most of the training we've been doing that is focused on the what is emotional intelligence? What are the competencies? What are the sub-competencies? And what are some of those abilities, depending on the model? We are going to be looking at the very essence, the very foundation, why some people behave the way they do. We're going to go into research, research conducted in Italy. We're going to go into research conducted in the US, and we're going to drive it home with some practical element. So we're going to be dissecting the brain today. I'm not a doctor, but we've learned a lot about emotional intelligence, and you can't actually do a great job. You cannot do a great job on emotional intelligence without talking about the brain and the cortisol and the flow and the neuron, the mirror neuron. And so those are some of the areas we are going to be delving into today. Let's move on. So I want you to really look at this definition, because this is the definition that I am going to be working with significantly as we make progress. Emotional intelligence is really using emotions to think intelligently. How do you understand emotionality, emotions? What kind of understanding do you have of your emotions? And how do you regulate that understanding based on your awareness? Remember the Dharma Oracle, know thyself. If you know yourself and you know the other person, whether your subordinates, your colleagues, how that awareness, how are you able to use it to relate, to get productivity, to get efficiency, to get optimality, to get the best from the people that you work with, whether in the family, in the workplace, in your career, in the school, in academy, anywhere. How do you do that? So when you understand it, and sometimes I try to zero my mind from the other definition and say, I'm going to stick with this definition, using your emotions to think intelligently and thinking intelligently about your work, your emotion. We are going to be looking at what you would call 3 models of emotional intelligence. And please don't forget this definition. Emotional intelligence is using your emotions to think intelligently. Everything we're going to be discussing today, 99% of them will be on emotions, not even emotional intelligence. Because if you understand the foundation of emotional intelligence, which is emotions, then you will be able to know, how do I apply my emotions intelligently to get the best out of people? So using your emotions to think intelligently and thinking intelligently about your emotions. So let's start by looking at the brain. So today, if you are a doctor, you are in this session. If you are a nurse, if you are, please, let's discuss the brain. So because having a proper understanding how the brain functions is a key step to understanding emotional intelligence. And so the brain is actually has what they call, we have 3 brains as individuals. We have 3 brains. So you need to understand how the brain works. How does it function? That is how you will know how you can regulate the brain. So we were going to look at a few slides on the brain. So this is the first one, but we will first of all take it. So the first brain is responsible for the major things that you do, like breathing, beating of your heart, like eating, sleeping, is taken care of at the autonomic brain. That is the first brain, right? They occur when you are asleep as well as when you are awake. So most times you are conscious of it when it happens. So you are just reading. Sometimes you get very tired and you know that you're feeling sleepy. You're trying to balance yourself up. That is your autonomic brain that is functioning. But there is the emotional brain, which is the limbic region. So I will move to the next slide. I may come back to this slide. I want to quickly go to the next slide. So, okay, so let me go to the next. I'm going to come back to this. So let's look at this slide. Let's look at this slide. So if you look at this brain, this is your spinal cord. So here that I'm touching, this is your spinal cord, where your spinal cord runs through from here. So this is where information passes through to the brain. And so when it comes through here, then it moves to the next phase, which is the limbic system, where you have your emotional brain. And so a lot of times when information is transmitted to your brain, what you want to do as an individual is to be at this point, which is where you have, this point. You want to be at this point, which is where you have your rational brain. That is where you have your thinking brain, your logical brain. That is where you actually reason. And a lot of times we are not able to get to this point before we react to things. And that is where the challenge comes. And that is where we need to understand how our brain actually function, right? That's why, so again, I want us to try and be on gallery view. I want to try to see us. Can you click on your gallery view? Can we click on our gallery view? Okay, so that's fine. So I wonder, those of us who can be on our gallery view, that is great. I just wanted to see, those of us on the gallery view. So I'm just trying to do that so that if I want to give access to anybody to contribute, then that will be much easy for me. So thank you very much. So if you want to go back to your presenter's view, that is fine. So the rational brain is the brain that we all really need. So please, can you move back to your presenter's view, please? Presenter's view. Okay, presenter view. Okay, thank you very much. So the rational brain is actually where you want to process information. That is where you can actually think logically, rationally. However, because this is what you call the cortex. So this area of your brain is where we call, so this area of your brain is where we call the cortex. This area, this is where the cortex is. And so when you are in this area of the brain, it's very, that is where you can think rationally. However, because information flow from the first brain to the second brain, which is your emotional brain, what you find a lot of time is that the emotional brain hijacks that information that is going to your rational brain. And because of that, you are not able to process certain information, particularly when you are in danger. So let's assume that you went for on a tour and maybe a safari, and suddenly you see a tiger. Just seeing the tiger, there are certain neurons, hormones, like your cortisol, that will trigger and relate with the brain. And what happens is that there will be a response, and more often than not, you are not even able to logically think. It also happens when we have situations where two gentlemen driving on the road, one hits another, or please, I want you to give me, allow me to join the traffic. I said no, you hit me, we come down, I'm on tie, the other gentleman is also on tie, and the next thing you see, they're already punching blows right on the street. Two men who are supposed to be gentle. And so what has happened is that we have what you call your amygdala. The amygdala has been hijacked. And so when the amygdala hijack is actually, the emotional core, the centerpiece of your brain is just little item. If you look at this place, let's go there. So this is the amygdala. This is what really controls your emotional brain. And these little items you are seeing here, it has a lot of power in terms of how it regulates your behavior, your mood. And you see a lot of people, sometimes they are in certain mood, and sometimes you don't even know what is happening. And before you see, they experience amygdala hijack. We're going to show you some videos, going to tell you some stories to drive home the amygdala. But it's good for us to understand that what happens in our brain, what a lot of the things that, just a minute, okay, I've cleared all that. So what really happens in our brain, it's actually what you have here, which is you have the limbic brain, with the amygdala, and what you call the hippocampus. The hippocampus is a particular part of the brain that stores all the memories, the histories of what has transpired in your historical life. So if you have experience at home so for example, you were talking to your child and the child simply raised a nose in a very funny way, and you just felt that, okay, it was raising the nose at you. And behold, you get to the office, you are in a meeting, and somebody just rolls his or her eyeballs in a very funny way. You just assume that that person is raising the eyeball just because of you. And so at that particular time, if you do not understand the kind of emotion you are feeling at that time, what you would come in is the amygdala, which is your emotional brain, that will immediately trigger and say, who does she think that she is? Who do you think you are? And so what you will typically see is that that person would just, rather raise his voice. Hey, this meeting is ended. What do you think you are? Who do you think you are? I know when you join this organization and all that. And you begin to see people shouting at themselves in an organization. What has happened is that information was supposed to have moved from the, through the first brain to this rational brain, where you have the cortex. Your cortex is where you use for your rational and logical reasoning. But when the limbic has hijacked it, particularly the amygdala, when the amygdala has hijacked the information, then what you get is a response. And the response is always very spontaneous. And when there is an amygdala hijack, it can last for as long as 18 minutes. And the aftermath of that hijack can put you in another mood for as long as 4 to 5 hours. And what you see in such situation is that after a few hours, there is a kind of remorse by the individual. The individual begins to say, why did I do this? What transpired? Why couldn't I control myself? And the person will say, hey, I wasn't even raising my eyebrows because of you. I was actually having a system here, and I saw somebody, and I just mirror what the person was doing. It wasn't even because of you. On the road, when you see two individuals stretching, punch, even in homes, you find out that certain couples, they're just talking before you see one person is picking up plate, breakable plate, hitting the television screen, destroying. By the time that person calms down, when the rational brain now has the opportunity to settle down and digest the information, and the amygdala, the limbic brain, has released that information to the rational and logic brain, then the person begins to feel remorse. Oh, why did I do that? Somebody has slapped somebody. Somebody slapped a boss in the office. Somebody yelled at a boss. Somebody did this and did that. So it's very important for us to understand the role of the brain and how the brain works. So in order to round off this session, I will move to just demonstrate a few things. So the amygdala and hippocampus, they are very important. So the amygdala is the emotional core center of the brain, whose primary role is to trigger fear. It is the body anxiety switch. It brings that anxiety. It's always spontaneous. And a lot of times, unless you understand emotions and how emotions work, and know that you have an emotional brain, which is different from your rational brain, and also understanding that information that is passed on to you gets to the emotional brain before it gets to the rational brain. And so whenever things like that happens, for example, you are on the road, if somebody yell at you, rather than yelling back, why don't you kind of label the emotions like, oh, this guy is trying to trigger my amygdala hijack. He's trying to trigger. He wanted me to get angry. Why don't you call it what it is? And he wanted me to get angry and smile about it and say, hey, gentlemen, man, it shouldn't take that. So you always reset your rational brain to be able to do that. But remember, one of the reasons why the amygdala is able to cause that havoc is because of another part of the brain, which is also there, right there in the limbic region, which is the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the brain memory. It stores things that have happened before, and sometimes you know, a lot of things have happened in your life and you begin to relate that to the current situation, even though when they are not related. So let's move on. So I have used this particular slide to say that don't forget that this slide is saying that you have this limbic brain. If you look at the arrow, this is the arrow, the limbic brain, the first brain, which is autonomic brain, information passes through, going to the rational brain where we think, the logical, the IQ. Why Daniel Goleman said emotional intelligence is, you know, as twice as IQ. Even though as a researcher, I don't really subscribe to the Daniel Goleman emotional intelligence way, because empirically, a lot of those claims have not been significant. And so even though I'm a fan of Daniel Goleman because he actually hyped in the emotional intelligence, but a lot of the claims, even though to a reasonable extent they make sense, but empirically we've not been able to say emotional intelligence is twice as influential as what? As your IQ. But it's good to understand why, because information gets to your center brain first. So this is the amygdala. It's good to understand that in amygdala is actually the centerpiece. Is that little substance in your emotional brain that triggers the hijack. I put it here again. This, if you look at it from the back, you have the centerpiece amygdala, you have the cortex. So you have your emotional brain and you have the cortex, which is, I use this one to also show you, just to demonstrate how the brain works, the response, the emotional brain, how the emotional brain hijacks information. But in all that we've said, we must understand one thing, and we must understand that one thing very clearly. The other part of the brain, your autonomic brain, the rational brain, which is your thinking brain, they are not useless. The totality of your brain, the whole of the brain, is very important for creativity and innovation. And so, if you understand IQ, if you understand your emotional, the rational brain alone, and you don't understand how emotions work, the role of the amygdala, the role of the hippocampus, the role of the cortisol, which is in your kidney, which we're going to talk about. If you don't know the role, you will not understand why you react. And so if you look at that definition, you know, being intelligent about your emotion and using your emotions to become more intelligent, then you will now understand why the centerpiece, the emotions, you need to understand it. That is the only way you can be intelligent. So your creative brain, it is the totality, the autonomic brain, the rational brain, the emotional brain that you actually need to put to work to become. So the amygdala hijack, we said so much about it. So Daniel Goleman coined the term amygdala hijack to refer to an immediate and overwhelming emotional reaction, spontaneous. And that reaction, more often than not, is disproportionate to the stimuli that would have caused that reaction. So, and sometimes those reactions might not even have been anything related to you. And it might be what we call umbrella emotions and what we call false assumptions, which we are going to display. And unfortunately, if you don't understand that information gets to your emotional brain before you are able to process it in your thinking brain, then you would have reacted spontaneously and you begin to regret afterwards. And so understanding that information gets to my emotional brain first, it helps you to say, hey, hold on, what is going on? Hey, this is sadness. This is anger. No, I'm not going to do this. So it's very important. We know that. So it is the act of responding, out of measure with the actual threat. When you act out of measure, the body's anxiety switch, it is the part of the brain responsible for our emotional reaction. It is, the off mode. So more often than not, your emotional brain is in the off mode. What it means is that it is not active, but it is triggered by sudden events, like when you are threatened, when people have an individual who offends you in the office, or an individual talk to you, irrationally, or somebody does not empathize with you, it triggers the emotion. But don't forget, the times that we are in, this COVID-19 time, there are a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of unknown. People are scared. People are afraid. There is a lot of unknown. And so at this time, as leaders, as line managers, as managers, it is critical that we understand that people will, in the office, experience some emotional hijack, some amygdala hijack at this time. And so your understanding of what we are talking today, how the brain works, how you can understand your subordinates, how your subordinates can understand their bosses is critical. How you can understand your customers, your suppliers, your vendors. At this time, what kind of tone do you need to use? When is somebody getting upset? It is very critical how the brain works. So let's move on. So the amygdala hijack is characterized by 3 signs. How does it work? Strong emotional reaction. Then what follows? A sudden onset. What is a sudden onset? Something that develops quickly. And so you see somebody shouts at somebody else, or somebody just decided to break a plate, or like Zidane decided to headbutt somebody in a great match, a World Cup final. That is an emotional, an amygdala hijack. And by the time it happens, he got a red card. And what happens next? What you see is sudden sadness, which you can see in his face. And so what that means is, as great as the Zidane, the great player that he was, on the very last day that he was to play football, the final, France and Italy, he did what? He was emotionally hijacked. The limbic brain was overwhelmed. And what did he do? It headbutted Maserati and he was sent off. Imagine, few minutes to penalty, and that suddenly happened. And France went ahead to lose that particular game. So that is what, and so sudden regret. Okay, so we are moving to the video now. Let's look at 2 videos that demonstrate what we are talking about here. The emotional hijack. What does it really mean? Strong emotional reaction. You will see what happened, what Zidane did. The second video, you also see what transpired and the sudden regret that came afterwards. So enjoy the video. After the onset, so you can see right there, once he was given the red card, you can see his soberness. So you will see him with the goalkeeper, the Italian goalkeeper, which is Buffon. You will see where Buffon, look at him, look at the way he's feeling. Okay, so what I want to do, I want to go to the next video. After this one, let's play that. Let's see if we can get it.
Once, when I was first engaged to my husband Dante, I asked him to meet me out for dinner to talk about wedding plans. He said he couldn't because he was busy with work. Well, I ended up going out with a girlfriend instead, and I just have so much left to do before the wedding. I'm really busy with work. I don't know how I'm going to get it all done.
I understand, Miranda, but you need to relax a little. This should be a happy time for you.
Oh my god, Denise, look. I think that's Dante with another girl.
Well, maybe it's just...
Busy with work?
Miranda, meet my new boss, Mr. Deli Moon. Mr. Moon, this is my fiance.
What?
Oh, nice to meet you.
Okay, so the video we've watched, I want to pause a little bit. I want us to go to the chart. Let's discuss the video a little bit, the two videos. Okay, so that is good to hear. Nice to hear that the second video was audible. So nice to hear that your second video was audible. But what we are just trying to demonstrate here is that if you look at so let me come back so that you can see me talk. Let's go to the second video that you listen to properly. The lady, had a fiancé, they're planning marriage, and what happened? He called the fiancé in the office, and he told her that, he was busy. And what happened next? The next thing is that she went, with a friend. She went out with a friend, and behold, he saw the fiancé there, and he didn't even know that it was a man, the boss of the fiancé. Maybe because of the coily hair, he thought it was a lady. And as soon as he got there, he just felt the glass cup that was right in her hand, and he got to realize that indeed it was the boss. And he was introduced. She introduced it to, oh, meet him, he's my boss. And at that point, you can saw what happened. That sudden attitude that came upon her dropped the glass cup, and by the time she came to realize that, oh, it wasn't what she thought, then just imagine that moment. What happens there is what the brain typically does, the emotional brain. And so if you don't know how to utilize your brain, if you don't know how to regulate your brain and how to regulate activities, understand people, trust people, then there's going to always be the incident of amygdala hijack. And sometimes it happens, it's crazy. I've witnessed, a man who always have this fight with the wife. And whenever he's fighting, it's like hell let loose. Hell is always let loose. She can chase her on the road, everywhere. Nobody dares to. And one day he was doing same, and he ran into a car, and that was the end of his life. And so amygdala hijack is real. It's the emotional brain, and it is something that we need to understand very well. So let's continue with the video. So I can see some, before I go back to the video, I can see some question here. Say, don't you think Zidane's action was born out of an innate accumulated grievance? So the issue, that is why it is very good to take certain tests. I don't know if you took that test. What studies have shown over time is to differentiate between personality traits, your personality, and emotional intelligence. Personality is more of what you would call who you are. It's relatively rigid, whereas emotional intelligence is something you can change. And so you can also understand your emotions and use your emotions to redirect, to regulate your personality. It is very, very important. It's not an excuse so that is why it's also good to learn, even though this program was not a program where we would have really touched on personality trait, particularly using the 5-factor model. We decided to introduce it because we know that some questions might come like this, so that you understand personality trait, most times they are relatively rigid, but emotional intelligence, like leadership skills, something you can learn, is something you can improve on if you understand how the brain works, where the cortisol is, what are the stress hormones that you have, like your adrenaline, like your cortisol. What is the role of a cortisol in terms of your reaction, the accumulation of stress, and how will that lead to, like what you saw now, an amygdala hijack, and how can you regulate that? So it is very critical. Imagine if Zidane has looked at it was a 1-second thing. If he had booted him, just imagine if he had said that, okay, this guy is trying to, make me upset. He wants me to get angry and do something, and allow the rational brain to work. Remember, that information was going to what? That thing that Matarazzi said was going to his rational brain. But the amygdala, understanding that your emotional brain is part of you, and it's the information we get to that emotional brain first before the rational brain will help you. So, and the issue of racism, protected racism, if you look at what happened there and some of the excuses that we later got to know, is just talk about, and which we were that talk about his mom. To be very frank with you, words have been said up to people, but how you are able to regulate yourself is what makes you emotionally intelligent. Whether you are a student of the Daniel Goleman School of Thought, the competency-based model, we talk about self-management, regulating yourself, self-control. What happened there was the inability for him to have what you call self-control, and emotional amygdala hijack occurred. If he has self-control, he would have been able to stop that. So I can see the chart coming. His action was also hijacked by the amygdala. It would have been rational if it got to the right. Yes, definitely, the thinking brain. And so it's good for us to always know. So let's be moving on. As we move on, we're going to see a lot. We're going to be sharing a lot of why we behave, why we are in certain mood, why we think, why we, even in our own home, husband, wife, why do we think in certain ways? They're going to surface here today. So let's move on. So I will go back to share this slide. Please just keep the message coming intermittently. So 5 top amygdala triggers in the workplace. So when we are in the workplace, it's good to know this is not exhaustive, and it wasn't meant to be exhaustive. It wasn't meant to be exhaustive, but you must know there are certain what you call triggers that we need to pay attention to. One of them is condescension and lack of respect. When people are condescending, it's something that really leads to an emotional hijack. And a lot of times in organizational value, and unfortunately, one of the models that we didn't talk about here today is the model by Adeline. It talks about values, vision, and mission in our own model of emotional intelligence. It's not one of the popular ones. And so you need to understand that I've had some, some experiences. I've worked in few organizations. And one of the things that I found is that when you have a value called respect, some persons in organizations who are very senior always believe that respect is one direct dimension. It is just bottom top. So those are the bottom of respect. But if you understand it, particularly an HR person, a compliance person, an ethics person must understand, a conduct person, that respect must be mutual. And so when you demand respect, you should also be willing to give respect. Being treated fairly. So one of the role of leadership we've seen in research is the impact of leadership and sometimes emotional intelligence on organizational justice. Justice is not equality. How do your employees feel about fairness? This training is not really for job satisfaction and organizational commitment. But when you look at a lot of research that talks about the 3 models of the 3 component model of organizational commitment, you find out that some individuals, most employees, according to Allen and Meyer, is that they are committed because they have affectionate commitment. Some of them is because of side bets And side-bed commitment is because they felt that if I leave this job, then it might be difficult for me to get another job. And the third one is about how do they see the organization? Did they see it as fair? Whether it's in terms of pay, whether it's in terms of bonus, whether it's in terms of the way people are, the way things happen in the organization. People see fairness, but not necessarily equality. And so when people see organizations are not being fair, it can trigger emotional hijack, amygdala hijack. And that is why leaders must be able to understand emotions and know when a subordinate is in certain mood. Facially, and a lot of moods are not said in words. They are non-verbal. We are going to look at that. Let's proceed. So another one is being unappreciated. Please, let's mute our mic, please. I am not able to right now mute everyone. Please mute your mic, please. So the next one is feeling that you are not being listened to, being held to unrealistic deadlines. So those are some of the triggers. Ideas to stop hijack, a model to interrupt amygdala hijack, physical withdrawal, particularly the times that we are in, the COVID-19 time. A lot of us are working from home, and there's a whole lot of new vocabularies, shelter in place, working from home, so different names, COVID-19, coronavirus, there are a lot of vocabularies right now. So physical withdrawal is what you do. So for example, if you have a boss who is hyper, intensive in the office, is always raising his or her voice, then you don't need to raise your voice. You must understand that if his or her amygdala is hijacked, yours need to be kept in check because you are now aware, you are now able to identify and understand emotions, and what your understanding can help you to regulate the emotions in others. And so whether it's from the Daniel Goleman, don't just see those competencies like, oh, you need to self-regulate, self-control, you need to innovate, creative, transformation. No, know them in terms of how the brain works. What do I need to know at any particular time? Name the label, trigger, or emotions. One of the things that we've also found out is that a lot of times we say we are sad, we are happy. We use what we call umbrella emotion. Rather, it's good to label the emotions that you are feeling. Are you angry? Are you sad? You need to label that emotions. So don't forget, when amygdala hijack occurs, what it means, hijack, it means that, what does hijack mean? Simply that information that is going to the cortex, the rational brain, has been hijacked by the word, spontaneously hijacked, in millions of seconds, hijacked by the limbic brain. That is what it just means. And so, if you understand that when information is being transmitted to your thinking brain, where you can think properly, it has been hijacked. And so once you know that, then you can know how you can regulate self and also regulate others. So it's very important. Take the time to revisit the hijack after some time, and which is always the case. Traditionally in Nigeria, in native parlance, they will say, sleep over it. So when you sleep over certain things, it might become clearer, and you might get certain perspective that you didn't get earlier. Ideas to stop hijacking, strength in appreciation, appreciate people in the office, think positively. Positive thinking is great. That's what you call positive psychology. That is your ability to see the good side of everything. The upside in risk management, we have what we call the upside of risk. What is happening right now? One of the upside of it is that we are here, we are able to, run this program, and we're able to run it to more than the number of people that we would have been able to run it for. And what does it also mean? It means that LeishTon Academy can tap from resources from faculties across different jurisdictions. And so educationally and otherwise, people begin to see what are the upsides of this global pandemic. And the world will never remain the same. And that is the truth. And so people will see certain capabilities that will become possible rather than what we thought before the advent of COVID-19. So sleep and exercise. Exercise is also very good at this time. You have your normal routine. You go to the gym, you do working, you go to the field, you play football. Right now, you might not be able to do that, but do certain acrobatic display in the house. You can do your, just the little things you can do at home just to keep your cortisol and everything, your parasympathetic neurons, the nervous system, running and flowing fluently. So self-care, take care of yourself at this time. This time, a lot of people, they are sad, they leave themselves, they are not able to take care of themselves, their emotional well-being, the physical well-being, the health well-being. This time is out when you need to take care of yourself. Turn on your parasympathetic system, which is your body's natural ability to return to calm. Make sure that you meditate, you breathe sometimes, you go for a walk, you apply, a lot of the little things that you can do to restrain your amygdala. Let's look at another thing. So we have been talking about the brain. We've been talking about the brain. Let's move to another item that is also important in knowing how we feel about our emotions. So in your kidney, so if you look at the adrenal gland, so we're going to talk about the cortisol. The cortisol is another element that you need to understand to know why you have certain behaviors, whether in your subordinates or in your bosses. So you have two kidneys, and on top of the kidney, you have what you call two triangular, elements, which is the adrenal glands. The adrenal gland, there are two, they sit just directly on top of the two kidney. And so what you can see here is, just a minute, let me bring this up here, okay? Just a minute, I just want to check if I can see. Okay, I'm just trying to read your message a little bit so I can see what is there. So the cortisol is what you call is a stress hormone. And for those that are doctors who did studied medicine, you will know that your hormones, they run through the blood, whereas your tissues, the nerves, the nerves, they go through the nervous system. And so your neurons, the cortisol, is just outside the outer part of your adrenal gland is where you have the cortisol. So the cortisol is the hormone that reacts to stress and adapt the body to stress state. And so what happens most time is that, when individuals, so if you have a subordinate, so for example, you are in a COVID-19 time, people have different level of stress. And sometimes we always feel that when stress comes, so there's a stress like a swing, it comes. And sometimes what we assume as leaders sometimes is that, so for example, if you lose a dear one, a loved one, whether based due to COVID or non-COVID, right? That can cause a lot of stress. And so it has an impact on your cortisol. And what that does is over time, so if you lose someone, you have a divorce, so there's a divorce case, you can't pay the bills, it can lead to what you call accumulation of stress. And when stress accumulates, what happens is that you find out that your cortisol is what you call stays on what you call the on mode. So the adrenal gland, more often than not, is only on what you call the on mode. What it means is that your adrenal gland is always on. And so a lot of times, from a cortisol perspective, you find out that when you sleep, your cortisol, does a lot of work. So when you wake up, it produces. So the adrenal gland produces a lot of cortisol. Cortisol is produced just, the outer part of the gland. So when you sleep, a lot of cortisol is produced, is made. And so as you work during the day, it goes for those that they are working the night, like security guards that work in the night, the reverse is the case. And so what happens is that when you have this accumulated stress, this cortisol, the cortisol is constantly now on what you call the on state. It means that you are not able to, to switch off your cortisol. So it's hard to turn off the cortisol because the adrenal gland only has the on switch. All stress, particularly severe stress, accumulates because of this on switch. It is very important for us to understand that. So if you ask people honestly how they feel about their job, a very large proportion are disengaged. If you also ask people, why did you leave your job? A lot of people will say, I left it because of my boss. If you ask a lot of people again, why did they leave your job? They will say they left because of my organization, But when it comes to job, a lot of people are just trying to get on. And this is not a topic to really discuss. A lot of employees that, in this part of the world, they are actually very much disengaged. So the above statement is a rough index most times of when you see people that have when you have people who, please mute your mic, please my mic. Edmond, please mute your mic, please. So please mute your mic. So you find out that, those individuals who just kept going, all they do, there's accumulation of stress due to certain things in the workplace, whether they believe that the organization is not fair to them, or they have a boss who is, always on them, under excessive pressure. So those individuals just get going. We don't really have much time to discuss the nitty-gritty of, why those happen. But the above statement is a rough index, really, of having little cortisol. They are in the wrong brain state of mind. So what happens is that the cortisol works with the brain. And so that is the area that is able to regulate, your stress hormone to be able to adjust. And sometimes when you are in that stress mode, an individual who is with low cortisol. So when you have low cortisol, that means your cortisol is always on the almost. So as you get such people more motivated, so what leaders need to know is my subordinate cortisol, is it low? Is it too high? Because when it is low, you find out that you will see them sleeping in the office, the way they are not behaving well, they are in very funny mood, they are, so when they are in that state, you need to know the conversations you need to have with them. And that is why you need to know how emotions are expressed just in with facial expression. And so if you're able to know that not all emotions are expressed verbally. So if you give such individual too much pressure, too little support, too little time, too little staff, too much to do, they start to feel overwhelmed, then they fall short and, performance suffers. They begin to underperform because they have too little cortisol or they have excessive cortisol. It is very, very important. So the art of leadership really is to help people. So why you need to understand this is that your role as a leader, particularly in the COVID-19 time, is to help people get and stay in their optimal state of performance. It is very key for us to know that where people actually get to their best, when people are actually at their best, that is when you get the best from those person. And so Daniel Goleman says that from a neurological point of view, this means that helping people get and stay in the best internal state. And what is that internal state? That best state of the brain, the optimal state, is called flow. The flow is that internal, the best internal state that employees are, and they feel happy, and they feel like they want to do great job. They can perform. And so that is the state you really want them to be. But you wouldn't be able to know if you do not understand how the stress hormone called cortisol, how it works. and how he's able to move what they call the mood swing. How it's always on if it is too little and if it's too high in individuals. So it is very important that we understand that. But it's important to know, so how do you get people to be in the flow state? How do you get people? So how do you get people to be in the flow state as a leader, particularly in the COVID-19 time? How do you get people to be in the flow state? So flow was discovered by researchers who asked one simple question of a huge variety of people. So they look at surgeons, ballerinas, business people, chess champions, people who are their best, like the late Kobe Bryant of blessed memory. They want to know, how are you able to sustain that level? They want to know, trying to understand, how does the flow state, how does it work? So what they discovered was that it did not matter what domain of skills they were involved in. It doesn't matter whether you are a medical doctor. It doesn't matter whether in terms of whether you are a business person. It doesn't matter whether you are a basketball player, you are a football player, you are Messi, you are Ronaldo, you are Kobe, you are James. It doesn't really matter whether you are the chess master. But what they found out, that everyone who was outstanding at a particular moment was in the identical internal state. And that state, that flow state, if you are able to get your subordinate to that flow state, that is the only thing that matters. That those people, as a leader, particularly at this time, if you are able to harness the quality, if you are able to harness understand the emotional part of your subordinates, if you are able to understand the cortisol, and you're able to put them in that flow state, then you will get the best from them. But what are the characteristics of this flow state? What is the characteristics? The flow state is characterized by unperturbable attention. Those individuals, that leaders have been able to move them where they can give 200% or more. They are completely flexible and adaptable. Their leaders have moved them to the state where they are not rigid, they are innovative, they are creative. Whatever comes, they can handle it. People at that level, their skills are challenged to the highest levels. Their skills have been challenged by their bosses. And so it comes to one of the things I often find in organizations. And to be very frank, this part of the world is what you would call the performance appraiser, performance management, performance measurement process. I found out that when it comes to appraisal, people are very excited. Employees, even HR, they are very excited about that end of performance, which is where they need to determine the faith of their subordinate. When they begin to grade them, apportion score, begin to talk about the bonus they will get, the one they won't get. But they are not very particular. They are not very meticulous at the goal setting, the performance setting, the goal setting stage, and the quarterly or monthly, kind of appraiser to begin to see how the subordinate, even some individuals. I did a training for an organization in Nigeria. They said they just wanted me to come and talk to their employees, about 70 employees, just to come and motivate them. I came to realize after the conversation that they don't set targets. There's no performance agreement. At the end of the year, I asked, so how do you rate your employees? Some seniors there are very excited to come and apportion fund, deprive people, but what are the performance measures? Even HR, a lot of times, are guilty. Performance professionals, they are guilty of this. So it is very, very important for us to know that you can use performance measurement, performance management to drive individuals, to drive employees into the flow state. And it is that flow state that you can get the best. And I will go back to the slide to read that last word again, which is very important, by Daniel Goleman. I said, the leader's task is the leader's job from this point of view is to help subordinate to get and stay in flow, in that flow state. How are you going to do that? That is kind of a secret weapon that has to do with a big discovery called the social brain. It is very, very important. So the state that people are performing at their best is also that state they feel at their best. Daniel Goleman said that if you take people to that flow state is where your subordinates perform at their best. And that is also the state that they are at their best. Just take note of this. That state that individuals perform at their best is actually the state they feel at their best. Imagine when you have employees who feel at their best, and that is the flow state that we have talked about. I wanted us to go back so that we can understand how the flow state works and what are some of the characteristics that embodies that flow state. So let's move on to this. So how can leaders help their people get to stay in the flow? So how do we get to stay, our subordinate, to stay in the flow? So a smart leader, an effective leader, an EI leader, emotional intelligent leader, an emotional quotient, a leader who is high in emotional intelligence can help subordinate get and stay in the flow by doing certain things. Set clear goals. If you have a performance appraisal process, I've seen HR, I've seen performance professional, they don't take the performance setting, that one that happens in November, December, January, February, and in some organizations even in March, the goals of what you need to achieve in the year, you need to set it, it has to be very clear. Hicks and Gullit in 1982 said, if you don't know where you are going to, any road might lead you there. But perhaps if you don't know where you are going to, no road will get you there. And there must be constant feedback from a line manager to a subordinate. It is very critical. What I found is the lack of leadership, where a lot of leaders in this climb, they don't take it seriously. And when it comes to the end of the year, they want to determine the fate. Leadership is the ability to influence others to achieve common goals. If you are not able to influence your subordinate rightly, correctly, it's very important. Lastly on this, I will say that it is also important for when people are moved into certain positions, it is very, very important that leaders, particularly learning and development leaders, ensure that the right leadership skills are given. Unfortunately, we are in an environment where people go and learn courses for 2 weeks. They say they are experts, and they learn emotional intelligence for 2 weeks. They say they are experts. And so everybody in Nigeria is an expert. So the question is, people who have read for 11 years, for 15 years, for 20 years, done research, what should they call themselves? And so that is why I always decide not to call myself an expert. I'm a scholar. I just read, I research. That is what I do. So even providers of training, it's important for you to look at materials, conduct proper screening for vendors, and begin to understand those that will be facilitating, what is their pedigree, what have they done. Go to LinkedIn, look at their profile, look at their content. What do they have? Check their write-up. Go to the area of research. Have they researched? There was a time somebody came to train us on internal control. The gentleman was training us with 1992 COSO integrated internal control framework. In 2017, when there was a 2013 model, and I said, why are you coming here to teach us with what you will call residual knowledge? I didn't tell him. I brought my rational brain. I waited. When the training was over, I called the gentleman and I encouraged him that, look, it is not okay. Even if you want to use the old model, like for example, if I'm teaching enterprise risk management, I might talk about the 2004 model. I might even decide to use the COSO, the Q, the ERM framework. However, I must talk about the 2017 COSO enterprise management framework. I must try to tell people they are changing. In research, it is not acceptable. When there are newer models, when there are newer ways of doing things, you cannot, you should not use the old model. So those in HR, those in L&D, those who are leaders. And I've also found leaders, the personal development plans of your subordinate, it is very critical. It is more critical at this time for us to ensure that our subordinates, we shall take direct interest, the kind of learning. How does it relate to the areas they have gaps, the areas they need to improve upon, or they need to improve on? It is very important. So let's look at another area that also shows the role of a leader and how the brain, another element, the mirror neuron, how it helps and the role that it plays in how leaders have what they call contagious relationship with subordinates. And so the social brain, which is, and you remember what I said here, that there's what they call the big discovery. It was the social brain, this kind of secret weapon. So you need to know, what is this secret weapon that I'm talking about? So the leader's task, the leader's job, from this point of view, is to help subordinate get and stay in the flow. That state that they are their best, that they actually are their best, that they produce the best. How are you going to do that? You need to know, how do I do that as a boss? That is kind of a secret weapon. But I'm going to share that secret weapon to you. And there's a research background to that. And those who are medical doctors, who are medical students, or who were medical students, who have migrated maybe to banking, they will understand this part of the brain. But psychologists also do. Those who are emotional intelligent people, they also do. So the discovery came of this social brain when scientists started studying one brain. Scientists were studying one brain, one body, one person at a time. But they had to now move to two brain, two person, two body at a time. So it turns out that there were entire circuits of the brain that are designed like a neural radar to sense what is going on in other person's brain. It's like the mirror neuron in the brain mirrors. So an individual mirrors another person. And so we're going to be just talk briefly on this, about that brain. So what happened is that these scientists, they started studying two brains in two body and in two person. Just a minute, let me try and read some charts a little bit. Okay, so thank you very much. I'm saying some nice comments here about the issue of appraisal and all that. That's always a very heated topic. And I hope before we finish this series, we will be able to run a series on performance measurement from a research perspective. People used to say, "Macleish, are you an HR person?" I'm not. I am a researcher who is interested in people. So I research in leadership, emotional intelligence. I research in different areas, but not as an end in itself, but how they affect organizational outcomes. Those things that HR people are interested in, which is empowerment, commitment, satisfaction, organizational citizenship behavior, organizational justice, development. I want to know, how does leadership impact those organizational outcomes? And that is my core research. My core dissertation when I did my PhD was actually on the role of transformational leadership on employees' job satisfaction and organizational commitment. So I'm interested in those areas, but from a research perspective, not from at the end of the day, I'm not a proper, what you call HR person, but I am interested in people's research. So I might be coming to you one day to say I'm doing a research on the role of EI on performance. So it turns out that there were entire circuits of the brain that are designed like a neural radar to sense what is going on in the other person's brain and to lock in to that and to have a silent brain-to-brain conversation no matter what else is going on. And so it's good to understand. So in Italy, this research was actually done in Italy. So there were some Italian researchers. So what they were doing is that they took a monkey and they were looking at, a part of the brain that moves the body, and we're studying just one cell at a time. One day, they were looking at the brain cell that was, it was just active when the monkey raised his hand. So the cell will be active when the monkey raises its hand. Then one day, the cell started firing, and the monkey was not moving. And so they were puzzled, they were shocked, and they were so amazed. Then they realized that it was a hot time. And they noticed that a lab science assistant had gone to get what you call a gelato. A gelato in Italy is like ice cream or yogurt, but it's a special kind of ice cream. And so what they noticed that when this lab assistant raises the gelato to eat it, they noticed that the monkey was also raising its hand. It was mimicking, it was mirroring what the lab assistants were doing. That was the discovery of what happens in us all the time. When everyone is with another person, it turns out that we have cells in our brain that are matching precisely what is going on in the other person. That is essential for us to understand the relationship between leadership and followership, leadership and subordinate. So the mirror neuron creates a brain-to-brain bridge. And this study came to when scientists started studying two persons, two brains, two bodies, rather than one person, one brain, one body. And they begin to understand that certain behaviors are contagious. And so when a leader does certain things, you find out that subordinate tends to do that. You see that with parents at home. In England, you find out that, I remember an uncle of my old school in England at the time was telling us that when he got to England, he went to Oxford, and they were asking him, he went to study law, he was the Inns of Court in Oxford, and people were asking him, is your father a lawyer? He said no. Is your grandfather a lawyer? He said no. Is your great-grandfather a lawyer? He said no. It's okay. How come you are studying law? And so for them, if you are a son of a technician, an electrician, a plumber, everybody should follow that track. If you are the son of a footballer, that is what they believe in the 50s and in the 60s. And so they find it strange that you are the son of nobody and you are coming to England, Oxford for that matter, to study law. And it was very strange to them. They said, how come? And people still believe that in certain society, particularly in aristocratic society, that certain persons should study certain courses. A professor's son should become a professor. The son of a doctor should become a doctor. The son of an accountant should become an accountant, like the Daffinones, all children and dad accountant. So those are the things that people, and so they were trying to understand, why was it so? Why is it that if you put two people together, husband and wife, they begin to look like the same, as if they were born by the same, they were given birth to by the same parents. So that is what, so the mirror neuron creates a brain-to-brain bridge that senses movement, emotion, intention. It is why emotions are contagious. Emotions are contagious. Why? Because of the mirror neuron. Leaders must be very conscious of what they do, how they are perceived by their subordinate. So the mirror neuron is a neuron that fires both when a person acts and when the person observes the same action performed by another. Emotions are contagious. We are constantly sending and receiving. We are constantly sending and receiving. So what is the message for leaders? What is the learning point here? Particularly at this time. What is the message? No, we've spoken about the cortisol, the stress hormone that is always on when you are short of it. How the accumulation of stress, because you need to know the difference between mood and emotions. A mood is more of, temporary. Because, but emotions and the mood, most time, mood cannot be attached to anything. So, but if you look at what I explained, the amygdala linked to the hippocampus, who is the brain memory. So whenever something happens, somebody slaps you, you want to slap back rather than give the person the other jaw. If somebody curses you, if somebody abuses, somebody just is, you thought that the person was hissing at you. That memory that you have, oh, that was how Dele did it, that was how Johnson did it, is the emotional brain that is work. Your understanding. But how do you get the best from your subordinate? How to get them to the flow state. You need to get them. Where employees perform the best is where they are really at their best. So what the leaders need to learn, there is a special caveat to leaders. It is very important. Every leader that is listening to this webinar, there's a special caveat to you, because it's human nature that people pay most attention to and puts most importance on what the most powerful person in that group says or does. The leader is the center, for better, for worse. For those of us who pay close attention to American politics, you can see what plays today in America. Those values that Americans are known. For those who understand the politics of the Republicans and the Democrats, who understand what Republican stands for as conservatives, what the Democrat stands for as the liberals. If you look at the Republican today, the Donald Trump Republican, who before used to be the defender of the American Constitution, how today they have all become Donald Trump's Republicans. And so how leaders behave is very critical. And in every organization, how leadership is. If you look at Nigeria today, you cannot be better than the leadership you have. Organization cannot be better than the leadership they have. It is not possible. And so when we say you have a secret weapon, that secret weapon I talked about, that social brain, that weapon to help your subordinate get into their better state of performance, that state that they are their best, where they feel at their best. We are talking about using the social brain skillfully, knowing that emotions are contagious. Knowing that emotions are contagious. If you have a boss who is a bully, most of the subordinates will be bullied. They will be bullying people in the organization. That is why it is important for HR to always pay attention to those things. So the key point for any organization is that whoever in that organization is the interface of the organization's people. Customer, client makes them feel better. So whoever is the interface of the organization, right, is the interface, it makes them feel better. The employees, the customer, they make them feel better about the leader, or it is really more than they feel about the organization. So sometimes, most times when people feel bad about the leaders, and when you have a lot of leaders within an organization, people feel bad about, they generalize, they conclude that this is not a great place to work. What am I doing here? Some people join certain organization within 1 month. They say, what am I doing here? And they want to leave. So managing the emotional state of people is extremely important, from the highest level to the lowest level of leadership in every organization. So we've tried to discuss what the brain, the cortisol, how do they affect? How do you put employee in the flow state? How do you make people, how do you understand the layers of the brain? The autonomic brain. How does the limbic brain, the center brain, how does the right side of the brain, which is your emotional brain, hijack information going to the rational, the thinking brain? So we will just move quickly and talk emotions. And we are looking at wrapping this session in the next 15 minutes. We need to wrap this session in the next 15 minutes. Let me look at my charts and see what we have there. Okay, I'm just trying to read some questions. So, I think when we do the session for performance measurement, which may come at a time, from a research perspective, we'll be able to throw a lot of light in terms of what we should even consider, because a lot of the performance measurement scales. I remember one of the organizations we work, and one of my colleagues is in that organization. We used to sit with the HR person and we discuss. And a lot of times, even the HR person are not able to convince themselves that the measurements that they are using was good enough. And so I won't really want to talk so much about performance measurements so that I don't turn the class to a performance measurement class. But it's just for us to understand that we shouldn't just be excited about the end of a process. The goal setting, performance agreement is more important than the appraisal itself at the end. The end is the end state, but the beginning is the foundation. And when you lay a foundation that is not properly laid, then you have a problem. So it is very important. It is very, very important that we know that. I just want to talk briefly on personality, just to shed a little bit of light on the personality test that you have taken. For those of us that took the test, I just want to share this personality test. So the test that we took, just few words. It's not the intention is not to talk about individual tests of people. So what I've done with this slide is to break down what you did into what we call the ocean, which is the five-factor model. So we use this mnemonic to explain it, which is openness to experience, conscientiousness. What I just want to say is that you must have received the personality test. It's important that you pay attention to it. What the personality test is saying is not that you are this or you are that. It's saying in the pool of people that have taken this test, in that pool of people, for example, in conscientiousness, if you scored 99 or 95, it's saying 99% or 95%, if that is your score, of people within that pool, showed that personality trait less than yourself. And so if you are talking about neuroticism, so if your percentage is 1%, it's saying that 99% of the people in that pool where they score less than yourself. So it's not absolute in terms of you. So don't interpret it that, I am not open to new ideas in abeyance. No, don't say, I'm not sociable, I'm not friendly because I have a low score in extraversion. No, it's just saying that in the pool of the people in that particular test, that was where you stand, like when you say percentile. So don't take it, but anyhow you can improve upon that is good. Then your emotional intelligence, look at those places, areas you have your strength, and based on what you've understood about what we've learned today, then you can take it from there. We try to explain. So I told you earlier that it is important for us to understand the definition of emotional intelligence from using your emotions to think intelligently and think intelligently about your emotions. So there are basically three standard approach to emotional intelligence, the models. And I guess most of us, we are very familiar with Daniel Goleman's competency-based model, which has a quadrant, a 2x2 matrix. By the left, you have self-awareness, you have self-management, which is self-regulation. By the right, you have social awareness. Then down right, you have relationship management. But those that are more into the Maya, Salovey, and Caruso, I'm a very big fan of them because a lot of their findings on emotional intelligence are based on deep research, empirical. They are not motivational speaking kind of emotional intelligence. And some of the razzmatazz and the hype by Daniel Goleman were actually tested empirically, and they found out that they couldn't stand the test of time. So I'm a fan. Then you have the Reuven Baron well-being, and that model is very good, particularly for this time that we are in terms of our health, our emotional well-being at this time. Adeline is there, but it's not one of the major, but she's written a lot on emotional intelligence. You can add anyone that you want to add. So I've tried to discuss now on how you need to identify emotions and express those emotions, how you need to use emotions. So an individual's ability or capacity to perceive and recognize emotion. So in these slides we shared, the intention of this class of today is not really to talk about those things we are already so used to, which is identifying emotions. What does that mean? So I'm not going to go through reading these slides to you. I will share this slide. You'll be able to understand, but we've put a lot of details and some questions that should arouse your curiosity, that will put you on inquiry in terms of, do I really understand my emotions? Do I express my emotions the right way, appropriately? How am I using emotions, right, as a catalyst to facilitate thoughts? What kind of understanding do I have, both verbal and non-verbal? You know, how do I manage emotions in terms of regulation, self-control? Very important. Zidane Zidane had no self-control. It was actually what transpired on that day. But I can say, can you read your own and others people's mood? Can you express emotions effectively? Can you read the facial expression of colleagues, subordinates accurately? Can identify emotions they express in their faces? Sometimes a lot of the expressions that people make, they are non-verbal. Are you able? Because those are emotions they are expressing. It is very important for us to understand that. So let's move on. So the Maya Salovey, the test of emotional intelligence. So if you want to do a detailed test, but these are mostly what we researchers are very interested in, which is I might use a test of the Maya, Caruso, and Salovey EI test. I might use Daniel Goleman test. I might use the Baron test, right? But that's not where I'm going to. So identifying emotions. I've asked a lot of questions. Subordinate judge line managers who can read their moods as more transformational leaders, like them more and rate them more highly as leaders. How do we read emotion? It is mostly in the non-verbal and non-verbal. So it is important for us to. So I just want to say few things before I leave. Why is identifying emotions very important? I put it there, but it's good to understand facial expression. What triggers emotions? How does our body signal to others? It's very important. Do you know the facial expression? So look at these facial expressions. For example, how do you understand anger? How does a face look when somebody is angry? How does a face look when somebody is disgusted? What of fear? Right? Surprise, happiness, sadness. Do you know how those faces are? So I want us to take a very quick quiz. That will be almost like the last phase. I want us to take a quiz. By the time we finish with that quiz, you'll be able to know whether you understand how facial expressions are expressed. So take a look at this very well. Anger. So if your subordinate is angry, how does that subordinate look in his face? What is the facial expression? The non-verbal expression. If they are disgusted, if they are afraid, if they are surprised, if they are happy, how do you So this is how you begin to understand emotions. Don't use umbrella words. You are a sadist. Is sad? No. Is it anger? Is expressing. Is it disgusted? Is it a content? Is it fear? Is it surprise? Is it sadness? So how do you know if the facial expression of people? That is how you intentionally. So if somebody is doing something that wants you to, for your amygdala to be hijacked, then you begin to call that, label it, call it by the name. You say, you are trying to make me angry. And no, I want to take it. I'm going to process this. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to sleep over it. I'm going to take my time. So this, I want you to look at this 4 facial expression. So you have, so I want you to look at this facial expression: anger, sadness, disgust, happiness. Anger, sadness. So which one is the first one? Which one is the second one? So I want us to go, so I would stop to share right now. I want to go to the polling. We have a polling, question and answer, that I want us to answer. So please, I want us to take so let's go back and look at it again before we take the polling. Very important. So just tell me, are you ready? Do you want me to go back so that you can take a look at the faces again? Do you want me to go back? Just let me know that through.
Let's go back. Let's see the picture again.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So are we good? So you can. So let's take a look at the first one. So you can write it down, what you think the first one is. Then we'll go to the polling. Let's see whether we get it right. The first one, what is the gentleman expressing? What do you call that emotion that gentleman is expressing? Just 30 seconds more. So the first one, the second one, the third one, and the fourth one. So we'll go to the polling now. So let all of us, so I will stop sharing so that we can go to the polling. Give me the first one. So the first one. Okay, so I'm also a student, so I've taken my own quiz too. So I've taken my own quiz too. I've taken my own quiz, so let me stop sharing. Okay, and let's go to the polling now. So let's go to the polling. So what emotion? So let's go. So I'm launching the polling now. So let's go. So what's the first one? So we have 30 seconds. No, so use the polling. I've launched the polling. So go to the polling. So the polling is when you look at your, just go down. So you can see the polling now. So polling, just click on polling. I've launched it. Okay. The first one, okay. Okay. We are really good. We are good. We are good. We are good. Okay. So second one. Okay. Second one. Okay. Wow. So the second one, I'm seeing disgust 13%, anger 31%, happiness 0%, sadness 56%. So 30 seconds to go for the second one. 30% to go. Okay, 30% to go. So for the first one, happiness was for the first one, happiness was okay. For the first one, sorry, anger was 11%, happiness was 84%, sadness was 5%, and disgust was 0% in the first one. The second one, anger, disgust. The second one, disgust was 11%. Sadness was 58%. Happiness was 0%. And anger was 32%. Okay, that's for the second one. Then the third one. What emotion is the okay? The third one, anger was 47. %. Happiness was 5%. Sadness was 26%. Then disgust was 21%. Then the fourth one, fourth but not the least, happiness was 5%. Happiness was 5%. Disgust was 68%. Then sadness was 16%. Then anger was 11%. So that is the that is a great one and quite interesting. So I've ended this polling now. So if you look at the polling, the correct, what we have here, the correct option in terms of being able to identify that number one expression, the facial expression, the emotion that the gentleman was expressing, the first one was happiness. Was the first one. And we got 85% as what? 85% of those of us that took the polling were correct. 11% shows anger, 5% shows sad. That was for the first one. So for the second one, the answer is actually sadness. So it's hello? Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. So you can see that majority of us can actually identify emotions, non-verbal emotions. And so the fourth one, if you look at the fourth one, it's disgust. 68% got disgust. Then 10% was sad. Happiness was 5%. Anger was 11%. Then the third one, 47% was said it was anger for the third one. The answer was correctly anger, but I'm surprised. No, 47%. And so it means that we were not able to, a majority, that is more than 50% of the participants in this poll could not accurately identify anger in the face of the gentleman as the emotion that he was expressing. So 45% got, 47% got it correctly by the time the polling was closed. So there's another polling I just want us to take quickly. Another polling. So let me share this result first. I've shared the result. Share the result so we can see it. So that's the result. Okay. So I want us to take another polling. I want us to take another polling quickly. This polling, do you have at least 2 direct reports? For those of us that are here, I want to launch this next polling. I want to know, do we have at least 2 direct reports? Do we have at least 2 direct reports? At least 2 direct reports. So I'm launching the polling, just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Then if you answered yes to the first question, I want you to answer the second question. If you answered yes, so I launch. So 1 minute, please. Just 1 minute.
Can I have that, please? Yeah, drop it there. Drop it over there. Over there. Say, drop it over there. And leave them immediately. Leave them now. Come on, leave them.
Okay. So let me end the polling. I'm ending the polling now and share the results with you now. So I've shared the results with you. So what these 2 pollings, this one is showing is that about 83% of us have at least 2 direct reports. We have minimum of 2 direct reports. But what this polling also shows is that out of the individuals that have at least 2 direct reports, it's only 70% of those that actually have their direct report join this webinar. And so this polling is a polling that we normally use in research just to also not to scold leaders, but to make leaders understand that part of the emotional contagion that a leader should also exhibit is the development of subordinates. And in transformational leadership, one of the dimensions of transformational leadership, which we call individualized influence. It's about coaching, mentoring, and making sure that your subordinate is moved to the next higher level. And so that dimension is very critical to the career path, to that subordinate getting to the flow state that we've spoken about. And so it is very important that when a leader is coming to this kind of, yeah, so okay, I can see some of the comments that we're told to invite our direct report. Yes, but what I realized was that those that ask, or those that forwarded, because we said in the mail, share with your colleagues. So those that shared with their colleagues, I know of certain organizations here that they had 3, 4, 5, some even 10 people join this webinar. We have some line managers that, some bosses, when it got to them, they copied their subordinates. That is intentionality. That is emotions at work. A leader that knows that I have subordinates, and 2 things could have happened. You could have shared it if you have seen it there that we ask you to share it, and you could have asked us to share. But what we are saying here is not to lay blame. What we are saying is leadership has responsibility. And one of the responsibility is the ability for you to influence. One of the things that I do, most organizations I work, the day I get to any place as a boss, what I tell my subordinates is that if I'm leaving this organization tomorrow, and this organization would have to go out and get another person to come and replace me, I have failed. My subordinate has failed. And so leadership is leading from the front and knowing that the development of your subordinate is as critical as your own development. So thank you very much for these 2 polls. Our intention really was that, so if you look the Zoom that we have, the intention also was to actually have a breakout mini case study. Wanted to do about 2 case studies on self-awareness and empathy. But unfortunately, we have even overstayed the time. And I will just launch this slide once again, and we would call this session a close. But just the way I will summarize it is just to show you the slide, certain areas. You can always go to any of our social media. So let me go back to this to share the slide with you. Okay, so are we good? So you can, so let's take a look at the first one. So you can write it down, what you think the first one is. Then we'll go to the polling. Let's see whether we get it right. The first one, what is the gentleman expressing? What do you call that emotion that gentleman is expressing? Just 30 seconds more. So the first one, the second one, the third one, and the fourth one. So we'll go to the polling now. So let all of us, so I will stop sharing so that we can go to the polling. Give me the first one. So the first one. Okay, so I'm also a student, so I've taken my own quiz too. So I've taken my own quiz too. I've taken my own quiz, so let me stop sharing. Okay, and let's go to the polling now. So let's go to the polling. So what emotion So let's go. So I'm launching the polling now. So let's go. So what's the first one? So we have 30 seconds. No, so use the polling. I've launched the polling. So go to the polling. So the polling is when you look at your, just go down. So you can see the polling now. So polling, just click on polling. I've launched it. Okay. The first one, okay. Okay. We are really good. We are good. We are good. We are good. Okay. So second one. Okay. Second one. Okay. Wow. So the second one, I'm seeing disgust 13%, anger 31%, happiness 0%, sadness 56%. So 30 seconds to go for the second one. 30% to go. Okay, 30% to go. So for the first one, happiness was for the first one, happiness was okay. For the first one, sorry, anger was 11%, happiness was 84%, sadness was 5%, and disgust was 0% in the first one. The second one, anger, disgust. The second one, disgust was 11%. Sadness was 58%. Happiness was 0%. And anger was 32%. Okay, that's for the second one. Then the third one. What emotion is the okay? The third one, anger was 47. %. Happiness was 5%. Sadness was 26%. Then disgust was 21%. Then the fourth one, fourth but not the least, happiness was 5%. Happiness was 5%. Disgust was 68%. Then sadness was 16%. Then anger was 11%. So that is the that is a great one and quite interesting. So I've ended this polling now. So if you look at the polling, the correct, so what we have here, the correct option in terms of being able to identify that number one expression, the facial expression, the emotion that the gentleman was expressing, the first one was happiness. Was the first one. And we got 85% as what? 85% of those of us that took the polling were correct. 11% shows anger, 5% shows sad. That was for the first one. So for the second one, the answer is actually sadness. So it's hello? Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. So you can see that majority of us can actually identify emotions, non-verbal emotions. And so the fourth one, if you look at the fourth one, it's disgust. 68% got disgust. Then 10% was sad. Happiness was 5%. Anger was 11%. Then the third one, 47% said it was anger for the third one. The answer was correctly anger, but I'm surprised. No, 47%. And so it means that we were not able to, a majority, that is more than 50% of the participants in this poll could not accurately identify anger in the face of the gentleman as the emotion that he was expressing. So 45% got, 47% got it correctly by the time the polling was closed. So there's another polling I just want us to take quickly. Another polling. So let me share this result first. I've shared the result. Share the result so we can see it. So that's the result. Okay. So I want us to take another polling. I want us to take another polling quickly. This polling, do you have at least 2 direct reports? For those of us that are here, I want to launch this next polling. I want to know, do we have at least 2 direct reports? Do we have at least 2 direct reports? At least 2 direct reports. So I'm launching the polling, just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Then if you answered yes to the first question, I want you to answer the second question. If you answered yes, so I launch. So 1 minute, please. Just 1 minute.
Can I have that, please? Yeah, drop it there. Drop it over there. Over there. Say, drop it over there and leave them immediately. Leave them now. Come on, leave them.
Okay. So let me end the polling. I'm ending the polling now and share the results with you now. So I've shared the results with you. So what these two pollings, this one is showing is that about 83% of us have at least 2 direct reports. We have minimum of 2 direct reports. But what this polling also shows is that out of the individuals that have at least 2 direct reports, it's only 70% of those that actually have their direct report join this webinar. And so this polling is a polling that we normally use in research just to also not to scold leaders, but to make leaders understand that part of the emotional contagion that a leader should also exhibit is the development of subordinates. And in transformational leadership, one of the dimensions of transformational leadership, which we call individualized influence, is about coaching, mentoring, and making sure that your subordinate is moved to the next higher level. And so that dimension is very critical to the career path, to that subordinate getting to the flow state that we've spoken about. And so it is very important that when a leader is coming to this kind of, so okay, I can see some of the comments that we're told to invite our direct report. Yes, but what I realized was that those that ask or those that forwarded, because we said in the mail, share with your colleagues. So those that shared with their colleagues, I know of certain organizations here that they had 3, 4, 5, some even 10 people join this webinar. We have some line managers that, some bosses, when it got to them, they copied their subordinates. That is intentionality. That is emotions at work. A leader that knows that I have subordinates, and 2 things could have happened. You could have shared it if you have seen it there that we ask you to share it, and you could have asked us to share. But what we are saying here is not to lay blame. What we are saying is leadership has responsibility. And one of the responsibility is the ability for you to influence. One of the things that I do, most organizations I work, the day I get to any place as a boss, what I tell my subordinates is that if I'm leaving this organization tomorrow, and this organization would have to go out and get another person to come and replace me, I have failed. My subordinate has failed. And so leadership is leading from the front and knowing that the development of your subordinate is as critical as your own development. So thank you very much for these 2 polls. Our intention really was that, so if you look the Zoom that we have, the intention also was to actually have a breakout mini case study. Wanted to do about 2 case study on self-awareness and empathy. But unfortunately, we have even overstayed the time. And I will just launch this slide once again, and we would call this session a close. But just the way I will summarize it is just to show you the slide, certain areas. You can always go to any of our social media. So let me go back to this to share the slide with you. Okay, so are we good? So you can, so let's take a look at the first one. So you can write it down, what you think the first one is. Then we'll go to the polling. Let's see whether we get it right. The first one, what is the gentleman expressing? What do you call that emotion that gentleman is expressing? Just 30 seconds more. 30 second more. So the first one, the second one, the third one, and the fourth one. So we'll go to the polling now. So let all of us, so I will stop sharing so that we can go to the polling. Give me the first one. So the first one. Okay, so I'm also a student, so I've taken my own quiz too. So I've taken my own quiz too. I've taken my own quiz, so let me stop sharing. Okay, and let's go to the polling now. So let's go to the polling. So what emotion? So let's go. So I'm launching the polling now. So let's go. So what's the first one? So we have 30 seconds. No, so use the polling. I've launched the polling. So go to the polling. So the polling is when you look at your, just go down. So you can see the polling now. So polling, just click on polling. I've launched it. Okay. The first one, okay. Okay. We are really good. We are good. We are good. We are good. Okay. So second one. Okay. Second one. Okay. Wow. So the second one, I'm seeing disgust 13%, anger 31%, happiness 0%, sadness 56%. So 30 seconds to go for the second one. 30% to go. Okay, 30% to go. So for the first one, happiness was for the first one, happiness was okay. For the first one, sorry, anger was 11%, happiness was 84%, sadness was 5%, and disgust was 0% in the first one. The second one, anger, disgust. The second one, disgust was 11%. Sadness was 58%. Happiness was 0%. And anger was 32%. Okay, that's for the second one. Then the third one. What emotion is the okay? The third one, anger was 47. %. Happiness was 5%. Sadness was 26%. Then disgust was 21%. Then the fourth one, The fourth one, fourth but not the least, happiness was 5%. Happiness was 5%. Disgust was 68%. Then sadness was 16%. Then anger was 11%. So that is the that is a great one and quite interesting. So I've ended this polling now. So if you look at the polling, the correct, so what we have here, the correct option in terms of being able to identify that number one expression, the facial expression, the emotion that the gentleman was expressing, the first one was happiness. Was the first one. And we got 85% as what? 85% of those of us that took the polling were correct. 11% shows anger, 5% shows sad. That was for the first one. So for the second one, the answer is actually sadness. So it's hello? Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. So you can see that majority of us can actually identify emotions, non-verbal emotions. And so the fourth one, if you look at the fourth one, it's disgust. 68% got disgust. Then 10% was sad. Happiness was 5%. Anger was 11%. Then the third one, 47% said it was anger for the third one. The answer was correctly anger, but I'm surprised. No, 47%. And so it means that we were not able to, a majority, that is more than 50% of the participants in this poll could not accurately identify anger in the face of the gentleman as the emotion that he was expressing. So 45% got, 47% got it correctly by the time the polling was closed. So there's another polling I just want us to take quickly. Another polling. So let me share this result first. I've shared the result. Share the result so we can see it. So that's the result. Okay. So I want us to take another polling. I want us to take another polling quickly. This polling, do you have at least 2 direct reports? For those of us that are here, I want to launch this next polling. I want to know, do we have at least 2 direct reports? Do we have at least 2 direct reports? At least 2 direct reports. So I'm launching the polling, just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Then if you answered yes to the first question, I want you to answer the second question. If you answered yes. So I launch. So 1 minute, please. Just 1 minute.
Can I have that, please? Yeah, drop it there. Drop it over there. Over there. Say, drop it over there and leave them immediately. Leave them now. Come on, leave them.
Okay. So let me end the polling. I'm ending the polling now and share the results with you now. So I've shared the results with you. So what these two pollings, this one is showing is that about 83% of us have at least 2 direct reports. We have minimum of 2 direct reports. But what this polling also shows is that out of the individuals that have at least 2 direct reports, it's only 70% of those that actually have their direct report join this webinar. And so this polling is a polling that we normally use in research just to also not to scold leaders, but to make leaders understand that part of the emotional contagion that a leader should also exhibit is the development of subordinates. And in transformational leadership, one of the dimensions of transformational leadership, which we call individualized influence, is about coaching, mentoring, and making sure that your subordinate is moved to the next higher level. And so that dimension is very critical to the career path, to that subordinate getting to the flow state that we've spoken about. And so it is very important that when a leader is coming to this kind of, so okay, I can see some of the comments that we're told to invite our direct report. Yes, but what I realized was that those that ask or those that forwarded, because we said in the mail, share with your colleagues. So those that shared with their colleagues, I know of certain organizations here that they had 3, 4, 5, some even 10 people join this webinar. We have some line managers that, some bosses, when it got to them, they copied their subordinates. That is intentionality. That is emotions at work. A leader that knows that I have subordinates, and 2 things could have happened. You could have shared it if you have seen it there that we ask you to share it, and you could have asked us to share. But what we are saying here is not to lay blame. What we are saying is leadership has responsibility. And one of the responsibility is the ability for you to influence. One of the things that I do, most organizations I work, the day I get to any place as a boss, what I tell my subordinates is that if I'm leaving this organization tomorrow, and this organization would have to go out and get another person to come and replace me, I have failed. My subordinate has failed. And so leadership is leading from the front and knowing that the development of your subordinate is as critical as your own development. So thank you very much for these 2 polls. Our intention really was that, so if you look the Zoom that we have, the intention also was to actually have a breakout mini case study. Wanted to do about 2 case studies on self-awareness and empathy. But unfortunately, We have even overstayed the time. And I will just launch this slide once again, and we would call this session a close. But just the way I will summarize it is just to show you the slide, certain areas. You can always go to any of our social media. So let me go back to this to share the slide with you. So what you can see after here, we have a video here that we would have played, unfortunately, just to also demonstrate this facial expression and what kind of emotions we see in this video. But unfortunately, we won't be able to finish the video. It's a video that depicts most of the things we have been talking about. It was a crisis time, like a COVID-19 time. It was a failure of a bank in a community. Unfortunately, you will see the leadership that would have been shown by this gentleman that is running. It's a great leadership skill, but we won't be able to finish it. And in this slide, we've also shown you an emotional map titled the name of the emotions that you've seen, like anger, disgust, sadness, happiness. Call them by name. Don't use the umbrella emotion in terms of bad and good. It is not the best way. Call it by its name and to shame it. So using emotion, how emotions help you to think. So we did a lot of positive emotions. So what we did here is we went further to ask you a lot of questions. So a lot of things we did here was trying to understand. So most of us are already very conversant with the Daniel Goleman. We just showed you here. We didn't want to replicate to be talking about it. What we did was to give you the strategies. The strategies. We focus on the strategies. So self-awareness strategy. We give you at least 15 strategies you use to master self-awareness. We give you the detailed strategy for self-awareness. We went further to give you detailed strategy on self-awareness. We went on self-management, which is the second dimension of Daniel Goleman after self-awareness. We went ahead to talk about self-control, which is an embedded part of self-management. Self-control, the number one in Daniel Goleman. But what we're just giving you is the strategy. Our intention here is not really to, for example, ask a trusted friend to give you feedback regarding your emotional control. Trust using the phrase, I feel, as opposed to I think. These are strategies. Practice breathing techniques when you feel stressed. Mentally rehearse staying calm in crisis like you are now. Ask yourself, is this situation truly that bad? Right? Ask yourself, how is my thinking distorted right now? These are self-control strategy. We went further to give you social awareness, empathy. Then we now actually went to empathy. One of the greatest dimensions of emotional intelligence is empathy. Empathy, lack of it, or having low empathy, or a leader who is low in displaying empathy as a skill, emotional intelligence skill, has a lot of problem in the workplace. We gave a lot of strategy, the kind of empathy you have and the strategy to improve in the area of empathy. So we brought out of social awareness, empathy, to really stress the importance of empathy. Then we went to the last strategy that relates to relationship management. We focus only on the strategy. Then we just told you the dimension of the Baron EI model, just to show you. The intention here is not to come and talk about the razzmatazz part of things. It will tell you how those emotionality, the strategy you can actually use to begin to build your emotional repertoire. So EI impact on related, we talk about the impact of EI. It has a positive impact on emotional health, on physical health. It has also on job satisfaction, organizational commitment from an empirical perspective, and the impact on effectiveness in terms of talent, in terms of retention, teamwork, commitment, efficiency in the workplace, and all that. Then we went about to begin to tell you what are the takeaways. To be very frank, understand the role of the cortisol, which is the stress hormone. If it is too short, if it is too high, the brain. We talk about the mirror neuron, the contagion. Why leaders should know that their attitude, the emotions they exhibit, they display, how they should regulate, how it has effects on their subordinate. We talk to you about personality, about emotions, emotionality, emotional intelligence. But the critical part of it, the emotional brain, the limbic brain, where you have the amygdala, and how amygdala is able to hijack from you, and how you must begin to think whenever information comes through to your head, saying to your brain that, hey, is it the amygdala that is hijacking? I need to relax. I need to calm down. Even when I'm having mood, when I'm having mood swing, when I'm under stress, mood sometimes can be bad. And when emotional hijack happens, you can do a lot of bad things. So we also talk about the EI models. You have the Daniel Goleman's model. You have the Caruso, Maya, Caruso, and Salove's model, which is the ability model. The Goleman is the competency model. And you have the well-being model, the emotional quotient. Remember, it was Reuven Baron in 1988 that coined the term emotional quotient rather than the term that Daniel Goleman used, emotional intelligence. He was trying to measure the emotional quotient, which is the opposite of intelligent quotient, the IQ. And so, but the emotional intelligence and EQ, they are one and the same, depends on the model you are using. Recommended EI strategies for leaders. So when you get the slide, the strategies, look at them, read them at your spare time, and they will do you good. So LeishTon Consulting and BoardGov, we are first a research organization. We do training, and we train through LeishTon Academy. At the end of the slide, you always get our details. You can always visit our social media handles, at LeishTon Academy, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, then LeishTon Academy YouTube. This video, before the end of the week, or as quickly as possible, is going to be posted on YouTube channel, in the LeishTon Academy's YouTube channel. Please always go to LinkedIn, tweet at us at LinkedIn. And this program you have even done, you can go to your LinkedIn page, put it there. We are registered with LinkedIn as an academic institution. So whenever you put that you have attended this program, it's going to show our logo. It's going to show, and when you begin to talk EI, people will know that you understand EI. If you also want us to come to your organization, to be very frank, we are trying to migrate. In fact, we are in the verge of completing the migration of our programs to and virtual program. What does it mean? This program you've done, we can run it for your organization for maybe 4 streams in a month, 3 streams, 2 streams, and we are able to reach wider audience within your organization. Next week, don't forget, I'm going to share something with you, and I want those that are here right now to have priority. I'm going to share the next 3 programs. I'm going to share it with you now, and I've said those of us that attended this program would have priority. You are going to get priority. The 3 programs, I'm going to mention them now, and I'm going to share them with you. And they're going to happen next Wednesday, 22nd, the next Wednesday, the other upper Wednesday, 29th, and 6th of May. So let me share it. But before I go, let me show you. I would say, if you have any question, I would look at the chat now to know if you have any question. But in the absence of any question, I would say thank you very much for your time. Thank you for coming. Just know that from a LeishTon perspective, we have just scratched emotional intelligence. This part, even though is the very foundation, but there's a lot more we can do for your organization. If you want us to come and work with you, if you are in L&D, if you are in HR, we can do so much more. So thank you, and thank you. But before we end this is our profile in the slide, LeishTon Consulting, LeishTon Academy. You can reach out this number, our emails are there. Then just this is about LeishTon. So before we end this, I'm going to stop sharing this. Then I'm going to share the 3 programs. Don't go. We need to share those 3 programs. We need to share those 3 programs quickly, very, very quickly. Very quickly. Just give me 1 minute. So thank you very much. I'm going to share the three today. The three programs that will be coming next. I'm sharing them today. And so it will be a great time to have you, all the participants we have today. It will be a great time to have you again. Then if we have opportunity to, we would be more than glad to bring in more people. We'll be more than glad to do that. More than glad. So thank you very much. And then, so, okay, this is Mastering Transformational Leadership. This is one of them. If anybody is still there, that will be fine. This is the one that is coming out 22nd. Mastering Transformational Leadership in COVID-19. The one that will follow 29 is about authentic leadership. And the one of 6th of May, it is about servant leadership. And so it is good to have EI skills, but EI skill is not enough. You need other behaviors in your repertoire. You need other behaviors. You need transformational leadership behavior. You need authentic leadership. You need servant leadership. And you will still need more. Howard Gardner said, you need multiple intelligences. So thank you very much. And thank you for your time. And God bless you. And God bless Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.